Does this image represent how some of you feel when you think about this time of being in COVID-19? Dark, detailless bodies blocked from connection, floating disease around them. What feelings does it elicit for you? I've been talking through Zoom with a number of people in our congregation and people really all over the country for the past 6 months during our corona-induced isolation. What seems to be lingering under the surface in many of these interactions is a sense of loss. It might be loss of control, loss of security, loss of connection. And with loss comes grief. And grief can impact people in many different ways. Perhaps in the ways that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross describes in her stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Have you noticed yourself floating between these states of being as you endure this time of isolation? What's been happening to us as we face this combination of coronavirus and life events, and particularly life events like marriages and memorial services, the beginning of school, or starting college? What about coronavirus and lack of emotional, spiritual, mental, social resources? Or coronavirus and a lack of time, money, food, or any number of things? Any number of combinations of issues with coronavirus. What I learned as a psychotherapist is that the longer we are in this in-between time, this between the old normal and the new normal way of being, this in-between time drains us. Drains us of our resources. We find we are more fragile, less likely to take good care of ourselves, sometimes putting off our basic needs, withdrawing from those that we love or care about, putting off the things that take care of ourselves, like our spiritual practices. You know, the practices, the things that we do to maintain some sense of internal peace. As Tara Haley writes, our surge capacity is depleted. And things we normally do, or things we handle relatively easily, if this was a normal time, become increasingly difficult. We are just depleted. We might find ourselves without direction or focus or motivation. All of these, too, are signs of grief and or exhaustion. And we are all experiencing some level of loss and exhaustion right now, at least everyone I've had contact with, however it manifests itself in each of their lives. Many of us need to find a way to consistently and intentionally manage this grief and exhaustion, because COVID-19 is not going to magically disappear one day. Sometimes a story can offer us some insight when we're going through trying times. So let's look at the story that you heard, Granny's Ride. You might have been curious as Andy started telling it, how's the story going to turn out? What's going to happen? And maybe you put yourself in each of the characters and wondered what you might do if you were Granny, or Smart the horse, or the enchanted hare. Granny's life had been utterly routine, unchanging for years and years. It sort of feels like I've been feeling these past 6 months of coronavirus. And then she gets up in the middle of the night by mistake and stumbles into an adventure that requires all of her bravery. Is that you? Smart, the stalwart horse, was called upon to be that partner who modeled calmness in the face of danger. Is that you? And the hare had been hunted for who knows how long, always scared, searching for allies, longing to be transformed. Is that you? Getting behind the things you're scared of. Well, what does that look like? Keeping calm in the face of danger? How do you do that? As Granny reflected on this adventure, we carried on. That's all we did. How are you carrying on right now? Stories offer a way to look differently at life, to ask ourselves questions, particularly questions about ourselves. How would we respond? How might we do more, do differently, if we had to, if we were in different circumstances? Well, my friends, we are in different circumstances. What if someone a year ago told you a story about yourself during a pandemic? Could you have seen yourself being brave or stalwart or transformed during it? Could you have wondered how you might get behind it? Or stay calm during it? Or jump into action in the face of it? And now, many of us are in this in-between routine of just having to live in it. Facing loss, exhaustion. How are you carrying on now that the story is real? Is it the same way you might have imagined a year ago? How has COVID-19 shaped the story you're telling yourself about yourself in this time? And I ask you to think about this. Is it time to change the narrative of the story of you in COVID-19 now? What place does grief have in this narrative about you now? Is it the starring role? If so, and if you're ready to do so, how do you change that? My friends, unfortunately, the only way to avoid grief is not to live. Being that we are all very much alive, we can choose to change our relationship with grief. I believe we must recognize, attend to, and honor our grief. Not to make it the star of the story, but a part of the story. We will have to notice that there is both recognized and as yet unrecognized losses weighing on us, exhausting us. And we'll need to take time to give attention to those losses and honor those losses by bringing them out into the light of day. Maybe through writing or singing or creating art or giving voice to the loss. Perhaps even sharing it with someone we trust. And did you know that we can be transformed by grief as well as transform grief? Let's move into a time of meditation, a few moments, and sit with that concept. We can be transformed by grief and transform grief. To move into this time of reflection and meditation, please take out your piece of paper that you've written on and put it next to you. And then let us sing Voice Still and Small. We'll sing it through twice. Martha?
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In a storm and rain, a sorrow and pain, still will remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears. Through all the years, singing, voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In a storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears. Through all the years, singing.
Take a few slow, deep breaths. and let your attention turn within. Listen to that still, small voice within you. That inner stirring of the soul that offers you direction, that aids you in your discernment. And settle into that connection within. Now read over what you wrote during the meditation, not looking for details. Let the stirrings of your soul guide you to a word or a phrase in what you have written. A word or a phrase that lights a way for you. Perhaps a new way forward. Perhaps a new narrative for your story of loss. And when you've found that word, and don't read just yet, write down that word or phrase someplace. So go ahead and begin. Read over and open yourself to a word or a phrase in what you've written. And then write down that word or phrase. Now read that word or phrase to yourself a few times, either quietly or aloud. And let it sink into you. Notice what it offers you. Hope, joy, direction, connection to person or spirit. Whatever it offers. Allow yourself to accept what it offers in the spirit of gratitude, thankfulness. I invite you to keep that word or phrase with you now, in your mind, or perhaps keep it on a piece of paper and put it someplace where you will see it. A desk, taped to your computer, someplace, somewhere, or some way, so you will be able to see it or hear it or somehow be reminded of the blessing, the renewal of spirit, the opportunity that it offers you. This word, this phrase, offers you a journey, a new relationship with grief, a new story about yourself, a beginning. In the light of this word or phrase, how will you tell the story of who you have become during COVID-19?